behaviour which resulted in the advance of these settlements, and then the walls that then constructed to ensure that those who have been evicted stay out of these places and have their rights restricted. We also witnessed one exchange between two settlers in southern West Bank, where they brutally and threateningly offered to buy a property from a little Palestinian who would be imprisoned at the time, and firmly informed the residents whereas the effect of if you don't sell it now, we'll take it anyway, very soon, it's up to you. That seemed to be something which they say with absolute unity. At the same time, this they were military checkpoints overseeing all of the areas of the were. I mean, overall, one might take the view that what hope was got for Palestinians from their land. And I came away with, in spite of that, there were some many Palestinians who still held on crumbs of hope, wanted to try and work with that. And certainly some refugees who had been evicted from the refugee camp in Tel Khan on the first day that we were there in the north, told us that they still, in spite of the fact of recent eviction, they still had hope that they could get back to their refugee camp, and they saw that as an ambition in their lives, and ultimately get back to Haifa, which their community originally came through the 1948. And there was a lot of useful energy in that place, which one worries about the young people in their circumstances with insufficient things to do and lots of time and energy on their the seeking a peaceful resolution is something which we constantly came back to in that conversation with people there. Chiefly, this will require major political change. I don't believe that we were selectively led while we were there. We spoke to a good range of campaigners, human rights people, ambitious politicians. On balance, people we spoke to, this is one learning lesson to me, were less persuaded by the parroting of the proposed two-state solution. Many felt that voters already say that it's too late, and were arguing that the concept is no longer helpful or achievable. I mean, I've advocated it myself, along with many others in the Westminster Village. But having now visited the region, I can see why some of the political energy, all the best focus for the energies of those who are determined to secure long-term peace, but it creates a clear and purposefulness which seems too far off an unachievable prospect. Now, I mean, Palestinians as well as converts in the ears of Palestinians, and the red rain to many Israelis. I floated an alternative concept while I was there, which is just one letter change, which is to suggest a two-stage solution, where there will be no resolution to the conflict until the segregated and discriminatory, maybe we should use another word to describe that, segregated and discriminatory state is dismantled for full democracy to be established, so votes for all, which is the case of the present. It would be based on votes for all, including, of course, by the whole Palestinians in a general election with truth and reconciliation process to follow. To decide we should be used state on state, what other combination should be. And then to support this, and this is the message which we want to take back to the government, we want them to be both equality, equal rights and votes for all. And to hear them say it, to encourage Israel to adopt a path to peace and to adopt sanctions, especially about trade with legal settlements until it does. Agree that both Palestinians and Israelis have equal entitlement to self-determination, stroke statism. I mean, recognising the state of Palestine is one of the kind of calls that is made, but actually recognising the right of Palestinians to self-determination. So it's a step stone on the way to that recognition. Surely the government must accede to that one. Stop all arms sales, arms licenses, and sanction those who stoke conflict on either side of the debate. And that obviously includes extremist ministers like Henry and Smotrich. But I hope those Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew. Not going to have one more speak
now. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to thank all of you for attending and giving the situation the gravitas that it deserves. I'd also like to thank ICJP for organising our trip, and I think they betted on themselves that we wouldn't get in, so I think they've lost a lot of money on that. And I'd also like to thank Andrew for tolerating me for a week, but I'd like to say a special thank you to both Palestinians and Israelis that we met. I think they were very brave, because some of them were putting their life on the line, not their life, but certainly their lifestyle. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them. What I'm about to describe, what myself and Andrew has seen, has been happening for decades. It's not new, but I think one term that we heard consistently whilst we were there is that it's got much worse since October 7th. So everything has been expedited, everything has been amplified. Indeed, just speaking to a colleague here before from Jerusalem, that every time she goes back, she notices the difference, but the rate of the differences has been expedited. It seems that the world's attention rightfully has been on Gaza for 18 months, the massacres, the destruction, the complete genocide of the people there. And in that, whilst that's been happening, it almost seems that an opportunity has been taken to amplify and expedite the situation in the West Bank. So that is something that I think is really, really important to point out, because it was mentioned to me by virtually everybody that we met. We witnessed firsthand a glimpse of what it must be like to be a Palestinian. It was relentless, it was humiliating. I felt that people were dehumanized. And unfortunately, a sentiment that I felt, that there was an erosion of hope. It was very difficult by the end of any hope of how the situation can be resolved. But I certainly feel that if the international community does not intervene in the situation in the West Bank, there's going to be a humanitarian catastrophe avian to what we've seen in Gaza. And the repercussions of what is happening is going to be indiscriminate and disproportionate. It's not really going to affect the Palestinians, the Israelis, the local region, but the global diaspora. The whole world is going to be affected. And I sincerely believe that if we do not intervene as soon as we can. So I just want to go through a few aspects of the trip. And first is the witnessing of the restriction of movement, the physical liberty of the Palestinian people. Now, we've all heard that Gaza is often called the world's largest open-air prison. But in the West Bank too, Palestinians are not just only imprisoned by their walls that we've seen for now many decades, but we have seen the checkpoints increasing its frequency and its numbers. So a half-an-hour journey is now taking people 4 hours on average. But one really disturbing feature that we saw, which I think many said was a recent phenomenon, was whole towns being gated off indiscriminately without warning. So we ourselves have witnessed one town as we were driving with an occupancy of over 40,000 people. There was a gate just across it, and people could not get on either side by any form of transport. So I just want to imagine that if that was my life or your life, and you had to get emergency medical supplies for a sick child or a sick family member, you drive down, there's a gate. You don't know how long that gate's going to be there, you don't know when it's going to be. You can imagine as a child, it takes so long to get to school anyway. With the advancement of this gate, means you can't take your family car, you have to find public transport on the other side of it. We met somebody who told us of the incidents in that town where a whole wedding had to be cancelled because there was no way for the groom to go to the wedding. And this is every single day, the mental and the physical toll this much take on an individual. And I saw with my own eyes, and so did Andrew, the men standing on the other side of the gates, and their eyes, they were almost soulless, because this is the daily occurrence for them, this constant humiliation. And so you've got the gates, you've got these gates, you've got the walls, you've got these sophisticated routes and pathways, you've got this very difficult situation of working in certain areas, schooling in certain areas. It's apartheid in everything, really, and as confirmed by the ICJ as well. And as I say, I don't know what that means for the Palestinians' hope and future and mental and physical well-being. We're here, and I think Andrew's given them a good term about settlers. And I think Andrew said to myself, it sounds something very genteel when you say it. But we saw firsthand aggressive Israeli colonizers. And it was absolutely shocking to experience. And what was really alarming and what was more interesting is many of these Israeli colonizers or settlers not only work with the protection of armed, they seem to be working in collaboration with armed. And we saw that in Safriyata, in a land where we were witnessing settlers who were already armed, grazing their cows, and then sheep came along on the land that did not belong to them. So whilst we stopped to observe this, a police car came hurtling towards us. I think some images of the police officers who came out pointing them at the hands, hands on the trigger. And it was only after our local guide explained who we were that the guns were lowered, but the hand was still on the trigger. And this was done with such involvement, and apparently this is a daily occurrence. And indeed, about half an hour later, we went to another area, which was still about 5 minutes away. There were two settlers, father and son, grazing their sheep. And the father made it very clear to me that he was carrying it up. And I think we've got the picture of that as well. And the gentleman whose land it was showing documentation in Arabic, but this is my land. And this was all being done while the police were in the background and completely allowing them to continue to do that. And it was just to see that your livelihood is being taken away with the state protection. And I remember what the police officer with the gun said to me: if they can prove it's their land, no, prove it. So that is a day of faith. And then we were in Hebron, where we were being hosted by an individual who has himself, after October 7th, was taken for 12 hours. He himself was tortured, sexually abused. And his house now is in the middle of neighboring houses whose houses have already been taken over by Israel. So whilst we're sitting there, two Israeli colonizers, I think that's came, and as Andrew said, look, you might as well give us this house, because we're going to take it anyway. And when asked why, the response was, because God has given it. When asked where did the Arabs go, he said, well, we've got the whole world. And for some reason, he mentioned it. Maybe because I think I'm not sure. And then on further questioning, what about the Arabs? He responded that he did not care about the Arabs, and he urged Peter towards the Prophet Muhammad as well. And then he just walked off, pointing the finger. He had a T-shirt with the Star of David, and on the Star of David was the middle finger as well. And he combined it together. And again, this was not just bravado. There was two soldiers standing there with pointing guns at the rooftops. And as I said, the house itself, the neighbour's house, had already been half annexed, and the house next to it had been completely taken. So it was just going to be a matter of time before his house was going to be taken. And so we saw this firsthand, and until you do not have that immersive experience, words cannot really express that emotion that you feel. Thirdly was the ground of religious intimidation. All of you here must be aware that, Al-Aqsa is the third holy site in the Islamic world. And I as a Muslim, I went there 4 times in my trip whilst I was there. Every single time I won, there were always more Israelis, settlers than there were Arabs in the compound. And we saw at one stage the dancing and the singing at the Lion's Gate in the Old Islamic Square, which is a quite famous gate for access into Muslim Aqsa and has historical context. And the singing and the dancing, as we're told, were of words celebrating the imminent building of the temple. in the site of the and this was done completely openly written. And subsequently, whilst we were walking in, over, I think it must have been at least a couple of hundred settlers with armed guards, and some of the settlers themselves that carried guns walked around the compound of the dock. So, and it wasn't as tourists, it wasn't as curious individual, it wasn't even worship, it felt intimidating, and it felt very, very aggressive. What was really also quite, maybe for my naivety, and I actually forgiveness for that, it was Easter Sunday, and I couldn't believe the amount of the level of animosity towards the Christian community. So it was Good Friday, and the Christian community, I saw a whole group of them out that were not allowed to enter the church and the Holy Compound in the square, whilst because there was allowing the Israelis to do at the same time. And we've also heard spitting actions towards many Christians walking by as well. It was absolutely shocking to see. I myself was not allowed to enter the Wailing Hall. My colleagues were let through, and the simple reason was he asked me my faith, and I said I was a Muslim. They said you're not allowed. So that was not allowed. I don't know if that's a rule or they made an exception for me. I'm not sure. Finally, we saw another part of the area. We travelled to Israel, to Tel Aviv, we travelled to Haifa, and the contrast was remarkable. Just an hour away, there were beaches, there were cafes, there was music, it was in the Mediterranean, and there was this real sense of calm. And you could forget that just a few miles away there were checkpoints, there was an apartheid wall, and less than an hour away there were bombs dropping into Gaza. It was just a completely surreal experience. Unfortunately, it was there where we met an Arab Israeli who was a member of the council there, who was an official, who gave me probably the most depressing aspect, despite everything that I see. Because I always look for hope, and I look for hope in the young, and I look for hope in the future. His role was to humanize the Palestinian people. So he spoke to school children on a regular basis, Israeli school children. And he described to me a group of 9 to 10-year-olds when he explained to them that Palestinians have children just like you are children. And they have hopes, and they have ambitions, and they are just like you. He expressed to me and to Andrew that that was the most difficult concept for Israeli children. And these were the terms that he used. Because, but baby Muhammad will grow up to be adult Muhammad, and adult Muhammad will kill Israelis. So therefore we must kill baby Muhammad. And that left a really, an emptiness inside me at that moment. So that's the depth of dehumanizing that we're witnessing. And I sincerely believe, and I was so glad I was with Andrew because he's an eternal optimist, but I sincerely believe that we are one village in that. At this moment, if the international community doesn't act decisively and urgently and with principle, what is happening in Palestine, what is happening is not just going to be a tragedy in Palestine, but it's going to be a stain on our collective conscience. And if it's left unaddressed, it will, as I said initially, it's going to have consequences not for the region or the world. So therefore, we must uphold the ICJ ruling that Israel policies constitute racial segregation and apartheid, and respond accordingly. Something being illegal, how do we respond? How have we responded historically? We must, however it looks like, I think the Palestinians have the right to see how they wish to live, but what we must do is support the Palestinians' right to self-determination. And then we can talk about one state or 2 states or whatever, but we must recognize the Palestinians' right to self-determination. And we must do what we have done historically as a nation. Israelis are our friends, but we must save sometimes our friends from disaster. And we must impose targeted economic, military, and diplomatic sanctions until all international law is respected. We have to be consistent. I'm not taking sides. I want to make this really, really clear. This is about standing in the right side of the land, and on the side of truth, on the side of justice, and on the side of peace. Because a future where Palestinians are free equal and live in dignity is definitely a society that is not a threat to each other, whereas the other society is a threat to us. And I feel it is the only path for a long-lasting security for both peoples. It's in everyone's interest, Palestinian, Israelis, and the global community, that we do not allow apartheid and impunity to continue. And I believe that the time to act is not tomorrow. We haven't got time. We've got to act today. We've got to act now, before more lives are lost, before more futures are stolen, and before, fortunately, that final minute passes.
Thank you, Dr. and your statements. So we'll move on to the question and answer portion of the press conference now. So we've got a roving mic as well. Please raise your hand if you have a question, and say your name and have a look if you're asking them. And we will also mention this to a particular MP or to microphone. So any questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to us. I'm Selma from the New Arab. I wanted to ask you a straightforward question. And we've heard criticism from Palestinian activists and from the Palestinian voices towards the Liberal Democrat Party, claiming that in some instances they've sugarcoated the situation in Gaza and beyond in West Bank. Do you think that criticism is valid, and whether that helps towards the genocidal case in the international courts at the moment?
Well, I think the Liberal Democrats have been more outspoken about the situation in Gaza than in the Western parties. So I'm not quite sure, I'm not aware of the nature of the criticism which would be raised. I mean, I'm here today as quite deliberately so as a backbencher. I'm not saying that I would choose to dissociate myself from the party and anything that's been said. I think that in general,
It's just the audio's on there. I wonder whether you could talk on that. You could stand at the mic if you.
Okay.
If you feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Just sort of slow the process down. So in answer to the question, I think that the Liberal Democrats have been more outspoken. There's certain in terms of our demands with regard to the situation in Gaza and the mainstream political parties, certainly more so than the government. We've been pushing, and I've been pushing my own party to take very assertive, very assertive line for a fight that I've described today, and I don't think that the party disagrees with the approach of my interpretation of what I've seen on the visit last week. As I say, I'm not fully aware of the criticism which has been raised. I mean, obviously the debates in all political parties, but I think we've certainly taken a very strong line in terms of the recognition of Palestine, in terms of sanctions against Israel, in terms of banning all trade with settlements, etc. I mean, certainly lines which are not, and of course, the formal line which is supporting the two-state solution, which has been well established for a long time. So I think all of those things have been within the portfolio of policy which the party was established. The sound burn as far as the issue we take.
Thank you. Yes, at the front.
Thank you, Abdullah al-Sheikh, BTV. How can the Israeli treat British MPs elected by British people in this way without any consequences on the relationship between UK and the Israeli government? There is no reaction from 10 Downing Street, no reaction from the government about all this thing. We see last week, there is 2 other MPs that are reported from Israel, and again, there is now there is a complete silence from the government.
Well,
Okay. I need to take that one up as well, which is make sure you're not. I think, you know, I'm not here to speak for the government, but I think, to be fair, there was a statement in the House immediately in response to the deportation of the two Labour members of Parliament, and the line taken by David Laming, the Foreign Secretary, I think was very firm and very much indicated the fact that he completely, you know, he finds the behaviour of Israel in that regard completely unacceptable, and there is a very strong cross-party standing with and standing behind those two members of Parliament. I don't know that they wouldn't disclose the information anyway, but we also had conversations. I mean, I had conversations with David Laming every 1,000 communications, so he was aware that we were going out, and I believe the representations were made, certainly Parliament was well aware, and they gave us all of the relevant contact points with regard to prior to us going out and during the process while I was detaining myself, which facilitated, one assumes, helped facilitate our entry into the country. No, well, I think probably, I mean, unless Rock has anything else to say on the issue. I mean, I can't speak for the government, Rock can. You put that question there.
Yeah, so just adding on to that, I think there's two questions there. One is the treatment of British parliamentarians. We may never know for sure, but I think conversations were, I suspect, had that meant myself and Andrew were let in when our two colleagues from the Labour Party went off. After that, there was a statement. There was a question. There was a statement in the House, and there was a statement made in social media by the Foreign Secretary. The other point is obviously the statements regarding the situation. That would be a lot stronger. That is a completely different issue altogether. If there is a little bit of hope to follow through, and I think Andrew and I discussed it, in our 9 months here, when there is debate in Parliament on this issue, I would say on average, this may need to be checked, but about 70% are speaking up on behalf of the Palestinian people. And that is progressively getting stronger. Not maybe to those that really matter, but that I have felt is turning in terms of articulation, even if they have already felt that way. But I feel the frustration.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mina. I'm Mina Habbab. I'm from Al Jazeera Arabic. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. I just wanted to know a few things. If the Israelis who are looked at in the Western UK as the only democracy in the world is treating members of the British Parliament this way, one would wonder how do they treat the Palestinians, the owners of the land? And do you report what you have witnessed to the Foreign Office, to David Laming, and what was his reaction if he did? And do you think he will take these things into consideration when he talks about the Palestinian-Israeli conflicts and the war on Gaza? The other question is about the Foreign Affairs Committee is holding an inquiry on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to understand a little bit about it. Do you think that the Foreign Office, with Emily Thornberg on top of it, means to understand in order to find a solution, or do they just want to whitewash the whole situation and make the electorates feel that something is being done? And if so, why isn't the UK government, in your opinion, not recognizing the state of Palestine as a way towards a solution or peaceful solution later on? Today, so the third question today, this morning there was a statement, a joint statement between France and the UK denouncing what's going on in Gaza about family calling for Israel to open the corridors for the humanitarian aid. What would you make of it? Is it enough?
Can I also say very quickly that I know that Shock had strong views on this as well. I mean, obviously, we're not in a position to talk about the market, but needless to say, I mean, we will be making representations to Foreign Office ministers. I mean, it's the first stage that we kind of get a chance to kind of, you know, assemble our thoughts and then even realign, and then we would see the meetings with the ministers. The ministers were well aware we were going out there, therefore they would expect us to report back to them. Obviously, having a Foreign Affairs Select Committee inquiry into the subject is obviously helpful as well. I mean, what do I think the reason why the Labour government are being less assertive and more fence-sitting in relation to their conclusions in the way that we would be pushing them to take stronger and more assertive action to advance the case for peace, for ceasefire, and sanctions against Israel's actions within the country. That's something which we can surmise, of course, and it may well be that the experience of the history of the Labour Party in recent years, the accusations of anti-Semitism and so on will be a cloud that still hangs over the party. And what we do notice is exactly as Shockey said previously, is that in any questions or statements which are made about the region, it's very clear that the majority actually of Labour backbenchers are actually on our side of the debate, are actually pressed into the government to do more to recognise the state of Palestine and to press for stronger action from the government. It's very interesting that I was walking this tightrope of embroidering language to not say that Israel had breached international law, but there is a risk of the breach, and it's that kind of walking that tightrope. And that's why, for example, one of my conclusions is that if they won't say that they will recognise the state of Palestine, then will they not recognise or support that Palestinians have as much right to state-written self-determination as Israel? That might be, a stepping stone on the way to recognising the state of Palestine. So are there ways in which to kind of draw them into being more? That's what obviously the Garbo are there to do it. Probably best. Further useful comment on
I don't try and do. We will be obviously presenting our findings. But the truth of the matter is this: I don't think there's anything that we're going to tell them that they don't already know. The consistent question has been, where is this red line? We have seen in Gaza, and they have seen. There's nothing that we will be able to physically hurt or verbally tell them that they don't know that. So that is the issue. But what is going to take our government to do this? There is now a momentum. There is the Foreign Office and the former Britain went themselves and gave a very strong contest. In fact, why that angle was, it's a different question whether it was because of their mistreatment or because of the mistreatment they saw. Now we just have to build a momentum here from the cross-party area. The Lib Dems, there's members also of the Conservative Party, SNP, the Greens, and members of the Labour Party to come together to put that pressure on our government to make substantial changes. We can tell them, they've seen their babies, they've seen everything. Whilst this was happening, obviously, the international law has been happening in the West Bank, and criminalities are occurring on a daily basis. Maybe we can amplify that aspect of it. But it's not going to be something, it needs a political will. And that political will requires a real strength of character from Keir Starmer. I believe who will hold the ultimate key to change the
We'll say one more script, Patrick, see what we can, and then we'll close the whole topic.
Oh, hi, I'm Patrick from Birmingham. I just wanted to check a bit more about this detention. Can you tell me what reasons they gave for your detention for an hour, whether there was any explanation? And also, whether you were also detained for some reason you were regarded as responsibility.
No reason was given. I mean, I spent a long time at the Czech Labour looking
at their screens. And I was simply sent back, no explanation was given. I waited for a very long time alongside some eyes from Canada with eyes, not particularly certain graph of there either. And we had a long conversation about it. But no explanation was given. King went through straight away, so obviously the squeaky clean image, whereas I obviously haven't. So I still know nothing was explained, but I mean, when I was sent back, I have to say, given what I knew in advance, and the fact that the media is there that already given me contact profile of saying things which I couldn't afford to do, right, I wasn't surprised that, and I was kind of half anticipating, being on that flight.
Yeah, so you can imagine my surprise, because Andrew wasn't in front of me, and he was sent back. So I thought there was absolutely no chance whatsoever that I was going to get through, but I just had the usual questioning one gets at border control. They did ask me where I had travelled, they asked me what I did. Once they found out I was a politician, I could see tensions and Googling going on and the changes in the facial expression. The lady at the border control then conferred with her neighbour, and that must have been for about 5 minutes, possibly longer. She asked my identity, the fact that I was a parliamentarian. Then just done my passport and said, have a pleasant stay.
Let's ask one last question. Just to get some focus on what to do next. There is this conference in June on the future of Jewish Palestine. And the French president, Emmanuel Macron, spoke a bit now about recognition of Palestine. Do you feel this is the kind of moment to push on all party basis to be able to go back because of saying this needs to be done on a sort of basis of France?
Yeah, we often hear the term that it must be done at a time when it's right for Israel, but I think it's not a gift for us to give, it's their right, and it's always been their right. And I think this time and this moment, we must utilise it to the best of it, potential that it arises, albeit at the death of thousands of Gazans, but we must now take this momentum and make sure we do give Palestinians self-determination.
Yes, I would agree. I don't think Trump's impact is going to have very significant, great significance in this.
Okay, we're going to have to cut the Q&A there, but we'll have one-to-ones for the group questions at the end as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to have one group here and one here, and both absolutely at the same time. So shock out the and then there's, yeah, please wait. It will start with Canada here, Marion here. Please come to me for the slots after that, and I'll organise them. They will be